Hi, everybody. My name is Laura Moore, and I want to welcome you to the Coaches Spontaneous Training today. Today with me, I am Laura Moore. I am the Region 11 Spontaneous Captain. Also with us is Geneva Moores. She is our Tech Master Extraordinaire and our Treasurer. To start us off, I want to talk about what is spontaneous. It's a part of the competition that team members really get to shine and show the different creative thinking skills that coaches get to see through the long-term process, but isn't often seen anywhere else. Spontaneous problem team members get to think on their feet, and they have to think quickly outside of the box. These problems are traditionally top secret, and only the team members that enter the room get to know this secret. It's more of a surprise, but students love the fact that they get to know something that their parents don't get to know until later. We try to have it be where students see, we ask everyone to keep it a secret until after Worlds, because problems are often reused throughout the year for states and regionals. Teams that participate in long-term problem, it's the same long-term problem, and division will get the same spontaneous problem. So if you're Division 1A, you will get the same spontaneous problem as everybody else you are competing against. And that is, again, why it's incredibly important that we do not share or tell anybody else our problem that we receive, because we don't want to give someone an unfair advantage. An example could be my cousin participated in Odyssey of the Mind growing up, and the problem he had in regionals was the same one he got in Worlds. So in that case, it was very beneficial for them, but also points that they do get reused every time. So this year is a little different since we are all virtual. The problem this year will be verbal. Now, a verbal problem is a problem that is answered orally. There's no acting out, there is no building required, it is a verbal problem. The other thing that is different this year is that all team members can compete. Whether you have 4 or you have 7, all of the team members can compete in this year's competition. Team members will be given about 20 minutes to compete and complete their assignment. This is due to the fact that coaches will be typing their response in a response form, and I will show you an example of that in a little bit. Team members will have a specific number of responses that they can submit. It could be between 30 and 40 problems. They're still working out the details. A key component of this is that the coaches will type. What that means is the coaches will type what the students say. So if the answer is something with a pirate and the students say "arg," that is what the coach will type. The coach will, and that is what it needs to say. If they say it in a pirate voice, the coach does not put in parentheses pirate voice. The coach just needs to write "arg," because it is what is being said, not necessarily how it is being said. This year, team members can respond in any order. If a team member reaches the maximum number of responses, but they still have time on the clock, they can continue to brainstorm answers. This is different than years that we are in person. Usually in person, it is they go in a circle, and if one team member is stuck, the team is stuck. This year, since it is a different format, team members can pop out answers. What I would recommend is practicing different ways to do this. Maybe do a round robin, give them a card, have them pace it out, because while you do have 20 minutes, it is a lot for one coach to have up to 7 team members saying random responses at them. They need to type exactly what the student is saying. So please, as you're working with your teams, make sure that you're coming up with different strategies and different tools to help your team be successful. One way I would recommend doing is, if you have 7 team members, give each team member 5 cards and have them practice giving you a response that you type on a document. If team members think of one or more if they think of different answers after they've completed, they can go back and substitute. But this is the team, not the coach. So if the team goes, our SpongeBob answer is funny, but I think we can make it better, they can go back and do that if there is still time allotted in their 20 minutes. When the time is up, the answers will automatically be saved. There is a submit button that the coach can click on, but it's not necessary. When we know more, we'll tell you once they've finalized the design of this, but that's the plan for now. And a lot of this could change. There are some things that can change in the upcoming weeks. Just bear with us. We'll tell you any information that we find out as we go. Best part, spelling doesn't count. We don't count it in competition. We're not going to count it now. So as you can see in the picture, if you spell penguin with a W, points, that does not matter. We are not spelling teachers. We want you to just get the ideas out. We have a practice problem that we will do in a little bit. Actually, I'll show you the practice problem. So in our chat, we have a practice problem, and this is what it looks like. And on the day of the meet, this is also what it could look like. It's got the title of the problem, which is night noise. It says, name a sound that you wouldn't want to hear in the middle of the night and why. For instance, you might say, I wouldn't want to hear a fire alarm because my house might be burning down. Come up with a fun name so you can recognize your answer. And this is for coaches only, but this is something you could do to practice. You can make a Google form, put 35 options, and then have your team type in an answer. So Pam, hi Pam Wilkie, nice to see you. I think you're muted. All right, so if we were doing this, you would come up with a team name, so you might do spontaneous. And you might come up with an answer. So Pam, what do you think? What would be a good one for a noise you wouldn't want to hear in the middle of the night, and why?
I wouldn't want to hear a fire engine.
Okay, so I would write, I wouldn't. Why wouldn't you want to hear one?
Because that would tell me somebody's house was on fire.
So right now we wanted to make sure that we had all the parts. So this is a practice. This would be a good time for us to say, why would you say that? What would you do? And then everyone would give their answers and you would hit submit. So I'm going to show you some answers that we have seen and had some fun ones. So we had someone say John, and he said, Daddy, because I'm probably about to lose some real estate. Another person said a lion's roar, because that means there's a lion on the loose. So judges, when they look at these, they will be saying, is that creative or common? But how I judge something and how Pam judges something is completely different. But the judges, when they judge that, if I think a lion's roar because that means there's a lion on the loose, I might think that's creative. When I judge, if I read that, I will hear that, and I read that 7 times, it will be creative each time. Judges are consistent when we judge. That is one of the things that we teach our regional judges and the state judges and the world's judges, is to be consistent and make sure that we are doing everything that we are being as honest and as truthful as we can be. And we're also being the same, because it might be funny to us now, but it might not be funny. By the 7th time you hear it, you're like, that's not as funny as it was before, but we need to honor the integrity and the creative points that we have established earlier. We have a lot of helpful hints, and this is something that Pam found out, is that there is going to be 3 to 4 practice problems that will be available on the Odyssey of the Mind website. It's odysseyofthemind.com. They're planning to put these out in like mid-January to give you kind of a sense of what the actual meet is going to feel like and what it's going to look like. It'll also give coaches a chance to practice typing responses. When you're practicing this, it's a good chance also to think about how you're going to do this. Is it going to be on a Zoom meeting? Is it going to be on a Teams meeting, a WebEx, whatever mode you're using? Are you going to be doing this from a social distance safely outside? Wherever you're doing it, you want to A, make sure everyone is safe, and B, that you can hear everybody.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Laura, I don't know if you addressed this earlier, but the practices, we're expecting coaches to follow the CDC guidelines for COVID. So whatever those guidelines are, for safe distancing, then that's what the team should be doing as well.
Yeah. I would also, another idea might be a conference call or a group FaceTime if families have the ability, because then, they can kind of interact with each other. This is a time again to be creative, but most importantly, we want everyone to be safe. So please make sure that however your team does this, that you are being safe and following CDC recommendations. Our website and Pam and Geneva have made an amazing collection of spontaneous problems online, and I'll show you that quickly. If you go to our website, Nova East Odyssey of the Mind .wordpress.com, and you click on the spontaneous, you will see an amazing item. It's a weekly spontaneous challenge. What happens is every week they are sending out a spontaneous problem for you and your team to try. After running the problem, we encourage the team to select 3 of their favorite responses to our Google form, and they will choose some to share with our region. You click on the form. So this week's are they were posted, they're due by the 6th, and the responses will be posted by the 9th. And this week's problem was talking about king purrs a lot. So this is a great chance to get your students, your team members, thinking outside the box. Is a great way to kind of wake their brains up. You know, this is the first thing that you should be doing. This is the first thing you can do every time your team meets virtually, to plan out, to kind of just get the juices flowing, come up with those creative ideas. Even if you are, when we go back to in person, this is another great time to just kind of let their juices flow, let the creativity run free. We have those on the board on our website. There's been a new one every week, so please make sure that you check them out. It's a great way to get started, especially if you are new to Spontaneous and Odyssey this year. This is a big one. Practice, practice, practice. And just like I said, the more you practice, the more comfortable they become. The more comfortable they become, the more comfortable they'll be when you get that email or you get the notification that you can go into the problem and you can all compete together. So the more you practice, the more comfortable you will become and the teammates will become. Remind team members to listen. And this was something that is very critical. Listening to each other's responses will help them come up with their own. While we're not doing, when one member is stuck, the team is stuck. If someone is stuck and you're having problems or concerns, this is a really great time where you can teach them tools. So if I say something about the kitchen sink, maybe Pam, on her term, she says, oh, there's a fork in the sink. And then Geneva might say there's a knife in the sink. So you can continue and add on from those. They might be common responses, but that would give you the spaces. And then with the time allotment, you might be able to go back and come up with something creative. The students could go back and come up with something more creative, but at least they've got those points filled in. Another great one is to practice brainstorming, discuss what their responses were, why they responded them, what they would do from there, and just keep building. It's something that students need to grow and progressively get better at. And it is a process, like you need to practice. It's not walk in, day up. This is not something you can just walk in, never have practiced before, because this is something that is different. It's not traditional, you know, they're not in school raising their hand on Teams or Zoom. They're not, it's a different system. So we want to make sure that they have a plan and they know how to act accordingly. Ooh, the computer is being silly, sorry. Verbal problems require a verbal response, and they were scored on the common and creative. Creative get more common points than not. What I would always recommend though is think of your judges, and this is one of my favorite examples. My dad judged one year, and it was something that is a rectangle, and that was the spontaneous verbal. And somebody said SpongeBob SquarePants, and they laughed hysterically, he said, and he's like, who's SpongeBob? So while your kids might think it's awesome, they also have to realize that there are judges who might not get it. So you want to make sure that they're coming up with creative responses, but also realize, like, if it's an inside joke, the judges might not get it. And they're judges from all over the state. So we want to make sure that we are doing our best, and we want them to encourage creativity, and laughter is always better, but just be warned, sometimes they might think something's funny, but the judge might not get it. So just to give them warning. I'm trying to think. Pam, can you think of anything else?
No, I think you're being very thorough, and I'm not sure what you covered at the beginning. I'm sorry. No, I think if we go to the next one is the resources.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One thing, it is a verbal problem because it's a virtual tournament. But if there's any way that you could come up and take a look at some of the hands-on problems, those are really, really excellent problem solving for students. There's some that could be adapted. Take a look at the different resources. Take a look at some of the hands-on problems and see if there's any way you could adapt at a distance, or it's possible that you could possibly have your team meet face to face in social distance. But I would encourage you to take a look at those as well.
Mhm. Hands-on are also a good way to get, if you're doing especially like a balsa problem, it's a good way to kind of get the team working and figuring out who does what and how they can best show their strengths. These websites, again, are amazing resources. The Odyssey of the Mind homepage is fantastic. We have archived problems from Virginia, Northern Pennsylvania's got some great ones, Georgia, Arizona. The Tennessee one is amazing. Our website also has ideas. If you Google search spontaneous problems, you can find some great ones. You can also email me and I can also share some with you. My email, and I'll post this later, is laura.moore@apsva.us. I'm pretty good about responding to emails and I can send some out to you if you need extra assistance. It's all about practice. Just explore, try new things. The problem this year is verbal, but like Pam said, it's great to try the other ones just to kind of get the blood flowing, especially if you have a hands-on group. Sometimes the hands-on problems are good at turning on their brains, and then you can practice a couple verbal ones. The biggest thing I would definitely recommend though with all of your practicing is figure out how you want to do it when the meet on the day that you get the spontaneous link. Are they going to go in a circle? Do you want to just kind of spitfire? Are you going to have like a way to help control the things? Because it's once you're logged on, once you've clicked the link and you're in, you're in. You can't, come back later. It's you're in, you're in. So please make sure that you've kind of practiced, you have a plan of attack, and you know exactly what you will be doing. And that you make sure that also that it's the kids' work, it's not yours. So if the kids say something, that you try to write verbatim what they type. If they say something, you type verbatim what they say, because it is them, not you, that is competing. And sometimes I know we want to kind of jazz it up, but we really need to honor the kids and their work that they're doing and do that. The next slide talks about the actual competition. During a time predetermined by the tournament director and communicated to all teams, the spontaneous portion of the competition will be found after logging into the members area. So there will be a time you will know that this happens. At some time during your virtual tournament, there will be a link to the spontaneous problem that will be available over a number of days. So it's not a 1-day window. There will be a few day window for you to do this. Your team can only access the link once, so make sure that you have a plan. Like everybody's going to be together. If you're trying to get together and somebody is sick or someone has a school thing or homework, plan another time. I would recommend have like 2 to 3 times just planned just in case. Please make sure that you're following health guidelines and that you are in control and you know what's going on. And make sure you have everything planned before you click on that link. Once we know more, we will publish it. It will be published and we will make sure that coaches are aware, because it is a really important thing that you are all well prepared. But the biggest thing is practice, practice, practice. Make sure that you are all being safe when you practice, whether you are virtual or if you are in person, socially distanced with masks on. Make sure you enjoy your team though this year. It's so much fun, and it really can't happen without coaches who take on this time commitment, work with the kids, understand how the program works, how it's really run by the kids. You're just kind of there to be the grown up on charge to make sure everybody's healthy and happy. Thank you for doing this. Take photos, screenshots, whatever you're doing. Make sure you commemorate it, because this is such a crazy year. This is going to be one for the books, where we're all going to go back and go, hey, remember in 2020 when we had to do this, in 2021 for the competition. And this is just the last reminder about coaches trainings, that today is the spontaneous, next week is encouraging creativity. We have other ones that continue to go from there. They're all found on the Zoom link. And you can always access the videos on our website again, Nova East Odyssey of the Mind.wordpress.com. Are there any questions?
I just actually put it in the chat, but how are you dealing with teams that have less than 7 members, or like if a person on the team absolutely can't make it, or for some reason doesn't want to do the spontaneous, I don't know, shy or what have you. But you know, I know for a fact that one of our teams has less than 7 members, so that
That's perfectly fine. Whoever you've got is whoever competes. For 7, especially this year, since we do have the different environment where all 7 can compete, what I would recommend, or maybe talk to that student, is see if they want to just sit around and listen, or maybe join in on the phone call so they can hear what the problem is and what their teammates are doing. If they choose not to participate, that is their choice. It's not where it's just round robin, everybody just kind of says answers, or it's however you decide to set it up. But if that student is, you know, adamant, like, no, I don't want to participate, they might want to just sit in and listen. So at least they can hear the problem and see how their teammates respond.
So ultimately it's graded on the 35 responses that they get, not how many students actually came up with those 35 responses.
Correct. We're looking at, this year we'll be looking at the responses because it's not in person. Whereas in person, like, it's usually 5 kids in the room who do the activity. This year it's the team can collect and do the answers together. You might have 2 team members who answer all the questions and a few other ones who add a little bit of tidbits here and there. But it comes down to your team and how your team interacts together as a group.
Laura, did you talk about during the practices having a plan for how they're going to respond? Like they take turns and go in order when they're practicing, so that everybody gets the opportunity to put in some answers?
Yeah, so I was saying you could do that. You could give everybody 5 cards and have everybody use their cards up at a time.
So if they're used to doing that, if they've got a plan that they have worked on, then they're more apt to follow that same kind of plan during the actual competition, so that people just aren't yelling out answers. And then it does give all the students, you know, similar opportunities.
Okay, so do the children, the students get to do the coaches, are they allowed to call on people, or would we get like one student to call on people, or nobody's allowed to call on anybody, or it has to be, you know, like, so that's kind of like, I'm wondering.
What I would recommend is practice doing it different ways, so you could talk to the teams, try different ways and see which way works. It's not recorded, you're just typing what the kids are saying. So you might practice it one way where you give each kid 5 cards, and if you've got a team of 7, and have each kid like go in order. You could have them just sit in a circle and go around. What I would do is practice some different ways to see which way works best for them, so when it comes to the day of the meet, they know what to do, and it's not necessarily you saying, okay, Bob, okay, Sue, okay, Fred. It's like they know what to do. And that's why practicing spontaneous is really important, is just getting into the routine of how are you going to do, how do they solve this problem?
And it also helps if a student gets stuck, you know, how does the team get past that? This is different this year because they don't have to go in order, and anybody can step in. But if they get stuck, what do they do? How, you know, how that might make a difference during the tournament.
And I think another thing you could do would be to ask the kids to elaborate on the previous person's response. So if someone is less apt to come up with something, but they can elaborate on something that someone else said, there's no reason why you can't encourage that kind of thing to make an existing answer even more creative than it is.
Okay.
Especially during practices, like that's really when you can have the discussion of explain more or tell more, and make sure that they're listening to the question, because sometimes the question has an answer for you, sometimes the question has like a very specific part. So like in the practice problem, it was name a sound you wouldn't want to hear in the middle of the night and why. Because if you miss the why, then it's not as detailed and it doesn't give as much to the problem. So there might be points that they might be able to go from common to creative with the why.
Mhm. And I think you asked an important piece of that question too. Could a coach call on students? And during, in years past, the 5 team members go into spontaneous without their coach.
Mhm.
So the coach's job really is to be only a scribe.
Yeah, so I mean, so you certainly don't want to be talking to them and telling them things while they're actually doing the competition
Yeah.
problem, but there is no outside assistance in spontaneous when you're practicing. When you're
Yeah.
practicing, you can, there's no reason why you can't encourage other students to come up with ways of expanding it. In fact, practicing the techniques for how to make things more creative. Can you make it bigger? Can you make it smaller? Can you add something crazy on top? Those kinds of things can teach them how to be more creative. And that's the whole point, is that you want them to learn how to be more creative. And in fact, next week, the encouraging creativity is a session that will have lots of examples of ways to encourage people to be more creative than just, the one word answers, which would be the easiest approach.
Mhm.
Okay.
Any other questions? Did that help?
Sorry, definitely.
Okay.
It did help. Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, no, because we did it with this past week where I gave 7 objects to each person and they put, their hand up with the object. But I did notice that some kids took over and some kids, barely used their objects.
Yeah. Well, you might want to do like the 5 cards at a time then to kind of force everybody to pace themselves, because I mean, we don't want to stifle any creativity, but that might also force those who are less hesitant or more hesitant to share. It might give them a chance to like do it. Now, you might not want to do it all the time, but you could do that to kind of help them get going.
Yeah, and you might have students who have great ideas but are just shy or
Yes.
not as assertive. And so their ideas don't get put out because they don't step up and get their answer on the table.
Mhm. And that's when those cards come in handy, because they have to put the card in, and that makes them say something. It's also limited. It also forces those who are very outspoken and very creative to kind of maybe harness and pick their favorite 5.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Now, do you recommend that when we're typing to put them under each person's name, or to just leave it blank and just, I mean, it was one way for me to be able to keep track of who is answering and who's not, but I didn't like the idea of attributing, because I want it to be a team effort as opposed to an individual's.
I think that's where the cards come in handy.
Yeah.
Because then you know that each student has 5 cards and they'll be giving the same number of responses.
Mhm.
And then they get used to it, that's their habit.
And for practicing typing, if you really want to keep track of like who's responding and such, you could have it in a document. You could practice. You could have like student's name, like you could do Laura, Pam, Geneva, and maybe underneath you notice that I'm talking a lot, but they're not really considered common or creative. And that's another thing, is if as you go, you could go, would you call that common or creative? Is it really creative, or do you think someone else would say that a lot? But you're noticing like I talk all the time. Geneva's got a couple like really solid, good creative ones, and Pam's in the middle. And then you can kind of see and be like, well, let's talk about the answers we came up with. And you don't have to necessarily specify. Laura said a bunch of common, Geneva said a bunch of creative, and Pam was 50-50. You can go, here's some of the creative ones. Here's some of the ones we heard today, and just start listing them and have them say common, like creative or common, have them tell you what they think they are, and then discuss why. Because then they can kind of see like, oh, that I think this works better, but because this or that. It's just the more they practice and the more they talk it out and the more comfortable they become, the more creative that they can truly show. They can show their creativity in such more of a unique way. And I think this year with the current setup will be a great way to see all of these teams' creativity.
One of the kids asked, is it more important to be humorous or creative?
Mm.
I think humor is a part of the creative response.
They
If
kind of
you-
go
if
together.
you've got somebody, if you've got the judges laughing, then they haven't heard it, 40 times before. It's something that's new to them. So I think they do go hand in hand.
Yeah, they definitely are coexisting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you have any questions, you can always send me an email. I'm happy to help.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Just got started, so we'll see how it goes.
It's so much fun. It's true. I competed as a kid for 6 years, and I was a judge for a few years, and I've been a spontaneous captain for about for 5 years, and it's just the best. Odyssey of the Mind is great.
Well, thank you very much. I think I'm the only participant today, but I'm hoping other coaches will be listening on this online later.
Thank you.
I think some of your questions are really going to help as well. I think you asked some very good questions that helped for some clarification.
All right.
Okay.
I think that's it. Thanks so much for coming, and if you have any questions, always email.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.